So, the idea here is to make a clean, straight up, honest junior company with good assets and leverage to the gold price. And I think that that's not typical. And when I go into, say, New York and sit down with these high-end retail brokers, to be honest, I'm out of there in about 15 minutes. They say, okay, you're a capital markets guy. You got, X and Y and Z investors in this company, which are two of the top three producers in the world, and Fidelity. And you got $50 million of someone else's stock, and you're not green fields. You actually have ounces in the ground that should be able to track a value. And typically they're like, oh, that's all I need to know, because by the way, we're listed on the New York Stock Exchange. There's probably a handful of companies in Canada that do this that are on the New York Stock Exchange, and we inherited this. It's an expense, but 2/3 of our investors are U.S. And when the market comes in, it's all gonna accelerate our share price faster than if you were just a Canadian.
And it's been great. And geologically, what really excites me is geologically, in combination with obviously the socio-political situation, is that it is absolutely rich with geology. Like, it has the similar geology, similar age rocks, similar kind of composition of rocks as what you see on the Abitibi Greenstone Belt, for example, which is the most prolific gold belt in the world, in kind of Ontario and Quebec, Canada. But that belt has been worked on for 80 years, 100 years, right? Whereas this gold line belt that we're on, specifically the gold line belt, it's a greenstone belt, has not seen much work at all. Right? There's one major discovery on it, a few small 2-3 million ounce deposits on it. But if you think of the Abitibi, if you think of a 100-kilometer stretch, you've got 100 million ounces of production, probably 50 to 100 million ounces of resources, still there. And if you look at the same thing in Sweden, it just hasn't been worked on. They haven't applied modern systematic exploration to it, and the number's much smaller. But you got to think that there's many more deposits out there, and that's what really makes me excited about First Nordic. And a big part of it is that these countries were not open to foreign investment till the late 90s, till the EU started. And now they've opened up and things have started getting hotter. I think it'll continue. And I truly believe both Sweden and Finland are probably the next frontiers of major gold discoveries in the world.
The original pivot was opportunistic, moving out of coal into copper and gold. But the chairman and I are former Newcrest and very much followers of copper and gold as assets to be held together. We like that natural hedge between copper and gold and the long-term value proposition that hedge creates. We used to talk about, and I still like to talk about, the copper gold hedge as a four-season cycle. You have autumn, when there's low economic activity and high political stability. That's the rare scenario, and both copper and gold are down. But then you have winter, low economic activity and lower political stability. Copper stays down, but gold starts to rise with that lower political stability. In spring, economic activity comes up, political stability stays low, and copper and gold are both high. In summer, you got high economic activity, maybe politics is getting more stable, copper stays high, and gold starts to go down. So 1 out of 4, and we would argue that that's the least, or the world spends the least amount of time in that space. Similar to the Lausanne curve, it's really just a useful tool to look at a company that does copper and gold and plan your activity really to match.
2021, we started our first surface drilling program. It's 10 holes at 1,145 meters in total drill length. I think the longest hole was 185 meters. This program was based just immediately to the south of what's called the Lekfrey section, where we had identified what we thought was a pay shoot in the ore body. And we believe we've extended that pay shoot, we've identified it and extended it to 122 meters below the current workings. Then in July 2021, we did another drilling program, also another 10 holes for 1,475 meters. And there we were looking for any parallel vein extensions from the old working. So we don't believe that there's only one single vein in this ore body, but there are parallel structures. The old timers also believe that as well, but their attempts of finding those parallel structures failed, or they didn't have the right equipment to explore.
I think there is a perception issue, and we don't always do a great job at telling the stories powerfully. There is a lot of great things that happen in the industry. Some of the most innovative technologies and the most socially responsible initiatives and some of the best community initiatives I think I have ever seen that create lasting impact, that address systemic issues, that are sustainable at a localized level. Those things happen. And so often we don't tell that story about what's happening and the incredible things that is going on in the industry. If you Google companies, often it's the nonsense and the crap news and all that doesn't work that's showing up. And people love negative news. But if you shift the narrative and you also share about the positive things that are happening, it starts to reframe, I think, people's thinking around it. So that's number one is, though I don't believe it's just a perception issue, we need to do a better job at telling the stories of also what's really happening on the ground, connecting those stories to mainstream audiences.
One of the challenges, without doubt, as I said earlier on, is achieving exploration permits because of the regulations and because of the requirement to interface with the First Nations. And I can totally understand, we're on their ancestral land. So of course they need to have a say in it. And of course they need to have the assurance that it's not going to be a rape and pillage like it was in bygone eras where nobody answered to anything, whatever they did. So that is challenging. I mean, I know the Ontario government has said that they will bring the permitting time down from discovery to production to less than what I think the average is 17 years at the moment, which is horrendous when you think about it, really. But I think the main challenges at the moment are funding, which isn't a challenge for us, and also getting government approval. I'll encompass the bureaucracy all in one. That is a challenge, but I have to say, Rob, that in our first 18 months of listing, we were awarded 6 exploration permits, 6 different properties. And I think that is testimony to the work that Kevin, who assists me or supports me, leads me on the First Nation liaison, and the work we've done and the trust we've gained with the First Nation. It is challenging out there. But as I said, open, honesty, transparency, communication is what gets you across that line.
We built a pilot plant and actually operated it from last year, and we've produced quality battery or lithium carbonate, which we believe in the next month will be able to evidence as battery grade. What is battery grade? Anything more than 99.5% grade is effectively Chinese or the rest of the world battery grade. So through a process that takes 2 days, instead of 18 months, you can produce lithium carbonate in a relatively green fashion. We will use 100% renewable power. We've already got proposals on that because Chile has got 60 to 70% of its grid today using renewable power. And we will re-inject the spent brine that is with the lithium taken out back into the aquifer area and the subsurface in a way whereby you're keeping the table flowing, and so it's extremely efficient. You get 99% of the lithium out, and compared to 40%, and it's not particularly expensive. You're looking at $4,000 to $5,000 a ton, and even today with the depressed lithium price, $10,000 a ton.
First and foremost is the sins of the past, I suppose, and that I've seen that trend over the last 30 years. That boom and bust cycles come and go. Investors come in and come out, particularly on the generalist side, and they've always sort of suffered by the cyclicality of the mining sector, but also the poor discipline of mining companies in the past to try and counteract that discipline. I think that's improved massively, and I think companies now are in better shape than they've ever been. Balance sheets are very robust. They have very clear strategies. They're very focused on shareholder returns. But on the flip side, there's been increasing barriers to development. Geopolitics has become on the front of everybody's mind. There's increased regulations. There's increased capital required to develop projects. So those are sort of the main things, I guess. And then on the side of that, also, public perception, I don't think has gone away. And things have got a lot better with the sort of critical minerals, energy transition thematics coming through. At the end of the day, the majority of people still see us as a relatively dirty sector. I think that's always going to be the case, because that's what the sector does. That's what we all do. And then I guess finally, and this always happens, but we've seen this massive shift in capital to other sectors. And if you take Canada as an example, they move a lot of the speculators would play in and dabble in exploration stocks, and they've moved across different sectors to cannabis and Bitcoin and AI, and now it's all about tech. And the Magnificent Seven is just dominating the market for most generalist investors. I mean, if you add up the whole mining sector, I don't know what it's worth, $1.5 to $2 trillion maybe, and Nvidia's $3.5 trillion. So you could sell Nvidia and buy the whole mining, probably oil and gas and utilities as well.